Today we're joined by Mike Hoffman with Vendingpreneurs.
So I went to a vending machine and I was like buying this bottle of water out of the machine. And I think it was like $3 at the time. And I knew that cost 20 cents at Costco. And I was like, some guy is making money off this machine while he's sleeping. And I am sleeping in the airport. And I just had an aha moment and I just went down a rabbit hole. Do you want to know what that route did last month?
I won't make you guess it's going to look like a fool. Tell us.
$75,000.
Oh my gosh. What does it look like in brass tacks, and maybe dispel some of the myths or the rumors that we might be prejudiced to think about what it is in 2025?
I have routes in all over the country, and I can track remotely all the inventory of every single machine just from my phone.
But what would be a good range of income or revenue that one of these could provide in a month?
I mean, Jared, I have a micro market that just closed the books in March and did over $22,000.
Jeez, one machine?
One micro market, yep.
Where do you get them? How do you finance them?
The crazy thing to me, Jared, that when I went to get my first machine.
All right, welcome back to the Niche Pursuits podcast. My name is Jared Bauman, and today we're joined by Mike Hoffman with Vendingpreneurs. Mike, welcome on board.
Jared, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, boy, I feel like we should just stop the podcast. If you're watching on video, we can go get a breakdown of what's going on back there. You seem to have some really good business plans in place. Probably not enough time today, though, unfortunately for that. I'm super excited for you being on the podcast. We're going to be talking about a business model that is so fascinating and interesting. Maybe before we get into it, though, give us some backstory on who you are and what you were doing before you got into the vending machine business.
Yeah, no, I think, Jared, for me, it's kind of it's been a fun ride. You know, I started living in rural Iowa, showing cattle at the local fair, like raising, classic farm town, 600 people, and had a lemonade stand as a kid. And I keep coming back to like vending being the 21st century lemonade stand because it's just supply and demand at such a simple level. And I was working for a Silicon Valley tech company. I was one of the first employees there, traveling a lot as their VP of sales, and I was in airports all the time. And as you know, uh, your flights often get delayed. And I remember one time I was in Denver. My flight had gotten delayed, and the whole the pilots are over their hours for the day, so you got to sleep in the airport tonight thing, and no restaurants were open. So I went to a vending machine, and I was like buying this bottle of water out of the machine, and I think it was like $3 at the time, and I knew that cost 20 cents at Costco. And I was like, some guy is making money off this machine while he's sleeping, and I am sleeping in the airport trying to chase quotas for my W-2. And I just had an aha moment, and I just went down a rabbit hole. And I was like, that, at the time working for this tech company in the bag, quote unquote, grinding, I was like, this is, there's something here with this. So I just went down a rabbit hole, and Benny, no experience, no mentors in it, just kind of went down a rabbit hole.
How long ago was it that you had that aha moment? Because I mean, you left. We'll get into the story. Let me just ask you that. How long ago was that? And then what were the follow-up steps that you took?
Yeah, I think it was around 2016 or 2017 that I actually had that moment. And, then I just kind of went and started doing the casual reading about vending, unattended retail, where the industry's going, just kind of those things as the market saturated, all the common thoughts, and just started to kind of figure out where I would fit into such a niche.
Now your transition, because we were going back and forth before this, it wasn't just straight into vending machines. You had a couple of forays into different passive income models. And I mean,
Yeah.
I think a lot of listeners are going to be able to synonymize with, some moment at a W-2 job going, I've got to change this. I've got to figure something out. But vending machines, it wasn't your first go at passive income or semi-passive income, right?
No, and the funny thing is, I got Mr. Passive as my tag on social media from these other sources, but now everyone wants to talk about vending, which, starting a vending route initially is not passive. Now, both the routes that I've built and what we'll get into it is definitely passive now, but starting out, it's definitely got some legwork. But I was making $1,200 a month as a coach in 2012 when I bought my first rental. in St. Louis when I was back in the Midwest coaching as a strength coach. So when your take home pay is only $1,200, like buying a rental was a little gut wrenching, and there's definitely some emergency fund support there that I needed to tap into. But when I started getting those paychecks from the rent from my tenants, and I paid a property manager, all that stuff, but I was just like, this is there. How do I get more of this without having to
Mhm.
do a down payment on every single home I want to kind of keep adding?
Hey, just a quick word, and then we'll get back to the interview. If you're into Haro style link building, then you're going to love this free offer we have for you. The team at Jolly SEO has earned over 25,000 backlinks, all organic, nothing paid. And now they're sharing exactly how they did it with you. They put together a completely free 55-page guide packed with step-by-step strategies and narrated video walkthroughs to help you follow along and learn how to build these types of links as well. And yes, it's 100% free for Niche Pursuits listeners. Check it out. Just go to jollyseo.com/free-haro-guide. Again, that's jollyseo.com/free-haro-guide. I'll include a link in the show notes as well. All right, now back to the interview. So walk us through kind of where the vending machine process started, because I think that we are talking about a business, and I'm going to just go from a high level. I know nothing about this business model, so
Yeah.
use me as like your guinea pig here. But I think I definitely think of vending machines as being old fashioned. I know they aren't, because I've done some research for this podcast, and I was blown away by how state of the art they are nowadays. And I also think about like inventory, and I think about having to own these machines, and I think about all these things. It sounds like something that is a little bit challenging to wade into. How did you get into it, and what were the first steps you took?
Yeah. So everything you just said is completely the thought process I had when I was like, oh, this is so interesting. Like, where do you find a machine? Like, what type of locations? Doesn't everybody that want a vending machine, as far as like a business, already have one? Like that
Yeah.
type of thing. And when I went down this rabbit hole, I realized like, holy cow, this industry is super archaic. It is going through a massive disruption, especially when you think of 2025. But when I got into it, I think it was 2019 was my first location. I went into an apartment complex. Here, I live in a college town in Oregon, and I just walked in, and I was like, "Hey, do you guys have like a machine?" They're like, "Oh no, corporate won't approve an old school machine." And I was like, "Oh yeah, no, there's like these modern micro markets like concepts now that are super luxury, like a grab and go at a Marriott type of vibe." And they were like, "Oh, cool! Like let's explore something that's more modern and not your old school Pepsi or Coke machine. No offense to
Mm-hmm.
those two types of machines, but they were like, we want to do that." And I literally, Jared, I had no idea where I was going to go to find these kind of modern machines. I just knew they were out there, so I did the whole Google thing, and then I just started learning more. I was like, holy cow, I don't need to put 50% down on this machine. I can finance a machine. Like it just started to parlay. And then that second aha moment was that first machine was making more than my first rental. And I
Oh
didn't
yeah.
have to put 20% down on a mortgage down payment.
So maybe explain to us from a high level the concept of a vending machine route or a vending machine business.
Yeah.
And then we'll get into the process you went through, but also tips that people can learn. What does it look like in brass tacks, and maybe dispel some of the myths or the rumors that we might be prejudiced to think about what it is in 2025?
Yeah. So a route, an easy way to think of a route is like driving around to all of your locations to stock. So if you have a route of 10 locations, then there's probably, 10 to 15 machines. Some locations might have two machines in your route, and you just go around once a week. Or if you have a really good location that might need 4 or 5 times a week, like obviously you hire people to do this eventually, but that's what a route is. And then some of the myths for me were like, I was always curious, do I have to go by the location to check inventory? Like, do I have to drive by this urgent care and see how many Celsius have sold before I know how many to stock it with or restock it with? And so, literally, I have routes in all over the country, and I can track remotely all the inventory of every single machine just from my phone.
Mm.
And so that whole remote tracking thing is super powerful. And then the other side of it too with these new machines is it's AI cameras are just reading the shelf space. So it's not the whole myth of like what bag of chip size fits in the motor of the old school machines. There's no codes that have a motor spiral down your Snickers bar. Now it's just shelf space. So we can sell bags of laundry pods, like big bags of laundry pods, like 14 laundry pods that would never fit in a traditional machine. We'll sell them for 15 bucks in a smart machine that's literally just got shelf space. You just detect what you want on your planogram for that part of the shelf, the bottom left corner, for example.
I've got to imagine location is important,
Mhm.
and I would have no idea where to start with that. You told a story about how you walked into an apartment complex and kind of broke down the process for them. Like, what's in a location? How do you find a location? I mean, I just wouldn't even know where to start.
Yeah, and I didn't either. Couple simple things. Location comes down to foot traffic. Foot traffic comes down to how often are people going by the machine. And you might think they're all duh, Mike. And so working backwards from that, if we talk about employee break rooms, like a business with a lot of employees, there's a parking lot that's packed and it's I don't know, it's a manufacturing office or a tech company or whatever. The first thing you got to think about when you think of employee break rooms is like, do they work remote on Mondays? Do they work remote on Fridays? Is it just 9 to 5 and it's a hybrid type place? Like, because that's all going to dictate the foot traffic that goes by inside of that building. Second thing to think about is like for me, I'm super bullish right now. We have an urgent care that's crushing it, but the urgent care is 7 days a week open and they only see 80 patients a day, which might not seem like a lot when thinking through the revenue projections. But guess what? Those 80 patients have an average wait time of 90 minutes before they see the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
So they're just sitting there for 90 minutes, 80 of them. Well, if you get 10 people to buy a $4 energy drink, $40 a day, I mean, that's serious money because it's just it's soup, keep it simple, stupid. It's almost like recurring revenue as long as that machine's stocked.
So, how do you negotiate with a place? Because you don't own these places. You're going to people's businesses. You're going to places that people frequent, whether an urgent care or an office complex, whatever. Like, what's the process look like? What's the the hit rate? How often do people? How often are people getting no's before they get a yes?
Yeah, yeah. So locations are definitely the number one indicator of your vending route success. So that pipeline on the front end of like locations is super important to the success. Everyone wants to jump to, oh, what do you think of this machine versus that machine versus this drink versus that drink? And the first question I'll ask is like, well, what type of location is it going in? And a lot of times, Jared, they'll be like, oh, well, I bought a machine, but it's sitting in my garage. I'm like, this is the whole problem. Locations are your first priority. In fact, I would even say before you think about getting an LLC or a work email, like location, location, location. So, um, I think the average hit rate on a pop in, which a pop in is you just walk in and you talk to the front desk at that urgent care, that front desk at an apartment. The average hit rate of a pop in is about 3 out of 10. So,
Wow. Okay.
yeah, but like the average hit rate of a cold email or a cold call, because we have in house cold callers and cold email specialists, that's one of the services we provide, is a lot less because these people we're reaching out to that make the decision, they're putting fires out all day. Like the HR person out of business is, hiring and firing people that are not worried about the machine down on the third floor lobby. Like the apartment complex property manager is worried about the drunk kid that left the shower on last night that flooded 3 floors below the drunk kid's room. So like,
It's like
that's
you
like,
speak from experience.
oh, well, absolutely. I purposely block off time on Fridays to do pop ins because one, people are in a better mood on Fridays always, and two, Pop-ins just have a way better hit rate than any other marketing tactic. I mean, a warm intro is going to get you anywhere faster than anything, but yeah, that whole like pop-ins with your flyer, you can't beat.
So I'm sure it's broad and I'm sure it ranges a lot, but give people an idea like what kind of revenue per month can you get on the low end and the high end from what you would consider to be like a successful machine. And I know that varies a lot, but like if you're making maybe $100 a month, you're like, you got to move that somewhere else. But what would be a good range of income that or revenue that one of these could provide in a month?
It's all over the board, and so the first machine, the pop-in we did, that first machine, it started doing $600 a month, and I was ecstatic. I was doing $300 in profit, so about 50% margins on revenue. And I was stocking it once a week. It took me about 45 minutes, and then let's say I'll spend about an hour and a half between like ordering product and stocking it. So about an hour and a half a week, I was profiting $300, which is how much my rental was cash flowing back in St. Louis at the time. So I was ecstatic about that initially, but now with these smart machines, I mean, Jared, I have a micro market that just closed the books in March and did over $22,000.
Geez, one machine.
One micro market, yep.
Oh
And
my goodness.
it's an apartment complex that half the units are rented to tenants. The other half of units are rented as an Airbnb for short term guests. So we have a lot of like hybrid, kind of almost your hotel guests that need toothpaste and toothbrushes from our market. And then we have our regulars that will get, our ice cream and salads and protein shakes, smart water, whatever.
Okay, so we've kind of established what is possible all the way from a couple $100 a month in profit all the way up to tens of thousands. This is probably a good time because now I'm starting to ask like what are the different types of machines from a high level? Which ones, I hate to say which ones do you want to focus on, but maybe which machine for which situation? Is this a good time to ask that?
Yeah, so the big thing with the machines is, we're not talking traditional vending. We're not talking about the old school enter in the codes or the motors. We can do that. You need if you have a location that's adamant that the machine needs to be outdoors, like next to, let's say at a YMCA next to the turf field or something. You can definitely get an outdoor machine. That's the old school, what you think of as traditional vending. But nowadays, these micro markets and smart coolers, if you think of just like that whole experience at a grab and go at a hotel, but now those shelves and a cooler, like there's a point of sale on the door. And
Mm-hmm.
so that door is locked. So like we have a lot of these smart coolers with these college apartments where we don't do want to do open shelves like a grab and go at a hotel because the kids will come home at 2 a.m. on a Thursday and just rate it and not go to the self checkout. And now we're dealing with a lot of theft. So what we do is we do these smart coolers where the door's locked. They have to put their credit card or their Apple Pay on the door for it to unlock. They're going to verify there's funds in the account. It unlocks. Every row has AI cameras that will track what you grab. So if Jared goes in and grabs a Celsius, a bag of chips, a Snickers, and a Philly sandwich to microwave up in your room, you're going to get charged for all the items that you walk away with. If you put the chips back when that door shuts, it's going to give you the chip refund. So the great thing with these is the reason the transaction value is so much higher than like the traditional machines that I've had, and I have one left in one location, but because speaking outside, but the transaction value is so much higher because
Yeah.
a traditional machine you have to re-enter in a new code now that you got your Snickers, but now you want the Diet Coke. I got to re-enter in, and where once this door's open with the smart micro marts and micro markets, whatever they grab is free game. So we'll have like college kids, we'll have $90 transactions on like Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights. I feel bad for their mom and dad's credit cards because they got chasers, they got munchies, they got all the things that they need. But then you think about the urgent cares. Well, now instead of, okay, maybe we don't want to put big bags of laundry pods like we do at the apartments, now we can literally put Dayquil, NyQuil, Advil, Ace bandages, anything that they leave the urgent care and the doc's like, hey, Jared, like you just have a cold. go get some over the counter meds at the Walgreens down the street, but there's no prescription we can do. Well, guess what? If we can minimize you having to go to Walgreens by putting it in the machine in the lobby, even better.
Let's talk about inventory and that whole process. Knowing what to sell, understanding, kind of your demographic and then what sells. And then how do you source all this? I mean, are you down at, Pick and Save every Monday buying all this stuff? I've got to imagine you've got a good process for that in place as well.
Yeah, yeah, no, these are really good questions. So, the first thing I did with inventory was I tried to understand, like that first location was an apartment with college kids. So I really tried to understand um, what kids were drinking, eating, all of that. And so if you think of this apartment, it's interesting. We have two apartment complexes, not very far from each other, but one is college kids. The other one is a lot of 40 and 50-year-olds that will just rent the rest of their life and they're totally happy doing it. Well, the college kid apartment complex, our top sellers are a lot of the health craze, Celsius, Alani, Prime, protein bars that have zero sugar. And then with our 40 and 50-year-old demographic apartment complex, not even a mile from each other, we can't keep Diet Coke stocked fast enough, Snickers, Reese's, like all the things that you and I would probably associate with a vending machine. So it's just, that's back to kind of, and how I always recommend when people are like, oh, well, what should I price it? What should I put in there? It's like, okay, go to the location, just sit in the lobby for like 45 minutes, like pretend you're on your phone and just watch what they're walking around with. Are they walking around with a Monster? Are they walking around with a Celsius? Are they walking around with a Diet Coke? Are they walking around with Poppy? Like all those kind of trends. And then you're going to get real data in the first month to double down on what's working. But then I think the second thing with regards to what to price it at, number one recommendation I always say is like go to the local convenience store. Like I had one of our vendingpreneurs in Birmingham, Alabama. I live in Oregon. He's like, hey, what should I price these drinks at? I'm like,
Mm,
go to the closest convenience store to your location and just see what that Celsius costs. Just see what that bag of chips costs. And then even if you price it a few cents more than them, they don't have to go down to the convenience store anymore.
right.
Like they're going to pay for the convenience. So that's kind of the pricing psychology side of it. I mean, sure, drinks are going to be typically about 3x. Snacks, the cost of goods has definitely gone up with inflation. So, you're at the 2.5. Candy bars are down to only 2x. So they're pretty expensive relative. And then as far as where we get our goods, I mean, I used to live our daddy daughter date with my 3-year-old used to be Costco every Saturday morning. We would do our groceries in the main basket and all of our bulk purchases for the vending route underneath. But now that was a big gap I saw in the marketplace. And so I built it's called VendHub, but it's a tech platform that has EDIs to the main suppliers of products across the country. And then I've negotiated rebates with like the Pepsis and Cokes of the world to people to buy off our platform, almost like Amazon for vending.
That's going to solve a huge problem because I can imagine like as soon as you start selling a bunch of stuff, the biggest problem is you've got to restock all that.
Mhm.
You said in the early days you were going out, once a week. Is that kind of something that people who are thinking about getting into it, is that a good back of the napkin math that they should kind of plan on? Like they got to shop, they got to go out and restock. And that's kind of the process for running it on a daily, weekly, monthly basis.
Well, it's totally going to depend on sales. So
Hmm.
the machine that was doing $600 a month, I mean, nowadays I would probably tell you that's a bad location. But like the good thing is I only had to go by once a week. Where we talk about the micro market that did 21,000 in March of this year. We probably were there 4 or 5 times a week.
Right. Okay. Right. Yeah. So it's directly dependent on how many sales you have.
Yeah, in a good way, and you
Yeah.
you, you get notified. I mean, we still profited a very healthy margin, even though our stalker was there 4 or 5 days a week.
Right. Okay. So we've talked about location. We've talked about products. We've talked about pricing and I think a big question left is these machines
Mhm.
and like, where do you get them? How do you finance them? I mean, again, speaking to someone who knows nothing about all this.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's different brands. There's definitely um, the crazy thing to me, Jared, that when I went to get my first machine, I had an aha moment that was like, "Holy cow! This is just like going to shop for a car." You got your cheaper ones, you got your even cheaper ones that are off market. So my first machine I bought, I was like, "This is awesome! I'm saving $2,000 by buying it off Craigslist, marketed as refurbished." Well, guess what? That machine got installed. It was a used machine. Clearly, I saved 2 grand on it. Within 6 months, the compressor went out and the machine broke down. And I was like, I
Mm.
never want to be a machine mechanic. I didn't get into this to be a machine expert. Warranties are powerful. I'm going all new from here on out. And people challenge me on that all the time because they love to save a buck, and that's just not who I am. And so I'm all about high leverage tasks. So you can get machines at all price points, and financing is very common. It's just like going to the car dealership. When you buy the machine, they're going to ask you like, "Hey, Jared, any questions on financing or any interest in financing?" And they'll throw out some terms. You might have some bank relationships of your own that might have better terms, but I think there's all kinds of brands. I'm happy to get into specifics on brands. There's smart cooler machines that there's a lot of cheaper options that are bulk built in, let's say, China, and then there's a lot of U.S. based brands that might be more expensive, but they're going to be more software focused. And when you get to 10 to 20 locations, and you actually want the back end software to be super powerful to make your life easier, that like you're gonna be glad you paid for the upfront cost of the machine.
For someone starting out who maybe is thinking about doing a couple machines or maybe up to 5 machines, like what kind of machine do you think they would be interested in? Which type would you recommend for someone like that?
Um, I mean, I can rattle them off. There's like five main brands. There's 365 Retail. There's Cantaloupe. There's Micromart. There's Haha Vending. There's evending.com. Evending is the company I started with initially. They have more of the old school type machines, but all those brands are different. Like Haha is definitely the cheapest, but you're back to kind of the bigger play with software and stuff. It's some people might just want to save a buck on the front end, and then Cantaloupe 365 and Micromart are definitely more of the um, kind of scalable solutions for you.
What kind of price points, like what kind of down payment or financing? Again, I'm just trying to help people understand.
Yeah,
We've talked
yeah,
about what you can make.
yeah.
Now let's talk about kind of what the machine might cost.
Yeah, I think a good, machine, or even like startup cost, your first location. What do I need?
Yeah.
What are
Yeah,
we
there you
looking
go.
at for expenses? And so a machine, let's say a smart machine is 6 to 7 grand. Let's just
Okay.
say 7 grand to shoot high and be ultra conservative. So 7 grand, let's say they require you to put 10, 15, 20% down. So let's just shoot in the middle at 15%. So you're looking at about $1,000
Yep.
on that machine down.
Mhm.
And then it's usually around $300 worth of inventory to stock it the first time. So there's definitely some manufacturers where you can get away with putting 5 or 10% down financing. So you could, in theory, get started for less than $1,000 all in with inventory. But let's just say $1,500 between your machine at 15% down, and then your cost of goods, $300. The great thing with the like snacks and drinks you buy to stock it the first time, you're not going to buy that again until it's already sold at a
Yep.
3x multiple. So those are truly your upfront costs.
Okay, so order of operations here. You recommend finding a location first before
Yep.
you get into all the business stuff, before you get into all the financing stuff. Get a
Yep.
location secured. Get your machine. You can finance it. You can get your stock for your first initial run. $1,500. Again, we're really rounding corners here, but just to give a general
Yeah.
idea of what it looks like to get this up and running, and then obviously for most people, the goal is to do more than one of these. So you're kind of starting to get some efficiencies at scale.
Yep, parlay that, and then eventually, what if you're like me about like trying to make everything quote unquote passive? I've had a lot of success with our routes listing job ads on Craigslist gigs. So on Craigslist, there's a gigs and there's a jobs board,
Mm-hmm.
but gigs is a lot of like your Uber drivers, your DoorDash, all of that, and so my first quote unquote stalker I hired was like, hey, I need to stock on Tuesdays and it needs to be between 8 and 3 o'clock while my kids are at school because he drives 45 minutes to drop them off at a private school and then he just hangs around town until he picks them up at 3. And so, like, for me, the great thing about when you stock is like, if you're a night owl, do it at night. If you're an early riser, we have one of our stalkers that he's a full-time teacher, but he loves going to the gym at 5 a.m. So he literally, we have a machine at his gym. So he just stocks it on his way in to work out every morning and he loves it. And so it's like, doesn't matter to us. Do it when on your schedule.
So let's talk about where you are at with this now. I think a lot of people love to hear the story of where you've arrived in terms of scale. Getting started is important, but where have you gotten your vending machine business to at this point? And maybe talk through from a high level that process, like how you scaled and how it progressed as you were scaling.
Yeah, I think for me, it's all about systems. I think just being at that software company in the valley for so long, I came at it from like a scalable like systems approach. So whether that's the hiring systems, whether that's our tracking of inventory, tracking of revenue, tracking of potential locations, very focused on those things. But I think we're probably at, or I know we're definitely over 100 machines. We did over 100 grand in March. We have 10 more machines showing up, micro markets showing up this week. So we're scaling very rapidly. I also, I think the future that's really intriguing to me, and I'll share it with your listeners, is I'm really bullish on trying to buy vending routes right now. So a lot of these baby boomers, you've seen like the kind of the boring business influencers out there of like buy a boring business. Well, I think buying an old school vending route from a baby boomer that's trying to retire and swapping out the machine, because ultimately you're just buying access to the locations that
Yeah.
they're in. And so I have seen firsthand, because we've done it ourselves, of swapping out an old school machine with a new concept micro market. Now, instead of that machine only being able to hold 12-ounce cans at $1.25 a can, we can put a micro market cooler in there that can hold 20-ounce bottles at $3.50 a bottle. That same location, you're going to 3 or 4x your revenue.
Guy, that reminds me, a lot of listeners here will have experience doing that with flipping websites, with
Absolutely.
buying e-commerce businesses, going in and immediately adding value through expertise. I mean, yeah, that's right up people's alley. So you can buy routes. Where do they sell
Absolutely.
these?
Yeah.
Where
So
do
I bought a route in Chicago last year
they?
that was doing 8 grand a month. Do you want to know what that route did last month?
I mean, you if it's the way you described it, I've got to imagine well, I won't make any guesses because I look like a fool. Tell us.
$75,000
Oh
last.
my gosh. Okay, I was gonna say 3 or 4x. So yeah, I would have been way off. And I mean, was it just machine swapping, or were you doing other things to improve?
Well, parlaying it. So this is the other thing that it was fascinating. So when I was going through the due diligence of buying this route, I had to like look at the contracts and go meet with these people and be like, hey, I'm buying it from person A over here. I'm the new guy like that you're gonna see type of thing. And then I started just asking questions like, how many other properties do you manage? How many other
Oh,
urgent cares? And they were like, oh, I manage 2 more. And I was like, thinking in my head, I was like, how in the hell did the guy that I'm buying this route from not flush any of this intel out? And then they were like, hey, oh yeah, you're gonna swap out that. We also want to add a freezer because we have all of our residents. This is downtown Chicago, come home from work and they forget to go to the grocery store. So like frozen pizza. So just adding value to these locations, like it was a no brainer, and so I'm super bullish on routes that are for sale, and there's more and more coming online all the time.
Where do people list these? I mean, is it old school Craigslist because these
Oh,
are baby boomers?
Craigslist, Biz Buy Sell, Facebook Marketplace is actually a really surprising place. It's a lot of like baby boomers whose wives are on Facebook and just throw it on Marketplace, and yeah, it's totally random like that.
How would you value a route? Like if somebody wants a shortcut, has some cash, and wants to buy a route instead of creating their own locations, like how does someone value that?
That's a really good question. I look at it as revenue per location. So a lot of people will be like, "Oh, I'm selling my route with 150 machines, and I got and then it's like, okay, but you only have 30 locations, and then so you have four machines at this location that's doing like minimal revenue. So I always like start with revenue per location, and then you start getting into, okay, is there like expansion opportunity? Where are these locations? Is it okay if there's one in an urgent care? I know there's probably 100 other sister urgent cares that we can go upsell to. So just things like that on top of just literally swapping out the 12-ounce can machine with an open market concept with bottles and higher end product.
The concept of buying a route versus starting a route, like what would you share for someone listening who is new to this, but not new to thinking about business, not new to thinking about scale? You talk about efficiencies, and these are things that people listening to this podcast think about probably too often in life. Like,
Yeah.
what are the upsides to starting your own and going out and find those locations versus the downsides there, and then some of the upsides? And obviously, there's gonna be the classic, getting going faster versus
Yeah.
maintaining, but maybe some of the ones that people wouldn't imagine.
Yeah, so I think starting your own, you're going to have say on what you set the prices for. What type of machines like you want to start with and build kind of your back end framework around. And then obviously, I think the biggest one was starting a route, which is what I would recommend if you have zero experience in operations. It's like just learning the process. Like I couldn't hire my stalker, who eventually turned into the general manager of our route here, until I knew what I was delegating. And I didn't know what I was delegating until I installed my first machine, until I learned how to set the prices, until I learned how to restock the machine, all those things. And then, on the flip side of kind of the positives of starting a route first with a machine or two, buying a route, you can get some good deals, and also buying a route, you're going to go way quicker. I think the downside with buying a route, especially if you're buying it from a baby boomer, is a lot of times they're trying to remove themselves from their business. So unless you want to buy a business and now be a vending route operator, you just need to have your operational structure in place to make sure that thing keeps humming without taking up a lot of your time.
Let's talk about this vending machine idea from a high level if we can, because you come from a background, yes, of a W 2 income, Silicon Valley, all that, but you come from a background of investing in property.
Mm-hmm.
That's long been known to be a fantastic passive income investment opportunity. You're all in on vending machines. Like, what makes this such a good opportunity that you've seen over the years, especially as it relates to some of the other areas that people typically turn to for passive income?
Yeah, I think right now the reason I'm so bullish on what I actually call unattended retail is there's this wave of AI both on the machine side, but also like think of the grocery store. You go to the grocery store now, and the self checkout is actually busier than waiting in line to go through with the teller, because now people like they don't want to talk to a human. They just want to. They have their pods in. They're talking to their niece or listening to a podcast. They just want to grab their stuff, go through on their own, and they're out the door. So I think this unattended retail kind of disruption, like it's a perfect product market fit. It kind of reminds me of like FBA stores back
Yep.
before COVID. Like those people that got in before COVID were now had the stores that were had all the reviews, had all the like seasoned experience, that when the market actually got saturated towards the end of COVID, um, now you kind of, or maybe it's not saturated, but you kind of get my point. Like
Yeah.
right now is a prime time to go into a location, even if they already have a vending machine, and being like, hey, that old school machine you have, imagine that 12-ounce can. We can do a 20-ounce bottle. Or better yet, we can do a 2-liter bottle. Like, what do you like? That just didn't exist back then. So it's like a perfect storm of grabbing market share for people that want to get into it right now.
What are some of the, if you can share anything along the way that you've learned that wouldn't be self-apparent, whether it's a story, whether it's a mistake, whether it's something that is a key to success, just something that isn't, readily available or readily obvious on the surface?
The health of your route or the growth of your route is totally based on locations. And so I come back to um, people should think through creative ways to grab as many locations as possible. And that could range from a friend that's super connected in your town or in your church or in your country club that you want to give like $100 or $200 referral fee for a location that ends up signing up, or even giving them a percentage of the revenue share. Like, hey, I know your father-in-law owns 50 urgent cares in town. You provide an intro. I'll give you 1% of all revenue from those locations. Like, I wish I would have known how important these locations are, because you're going to get to a point operationally where once you kind of scale it, it's like rinse and repeat. Like, your stockers are $25 an hour employees. At some point, the value of a location is just too much that you don't want to miss on it.
Perfect segue. I have literally written down right here, outsource is my next kind of topic I wanted to ask about. So whatever that is for people, whether it's 5 locations, 10 locations, 20, at some point, to your point, if they're seeing success, they're going to need to start getting help. Maybe it's they want to make it from a job to passive income. Maybe they're tired of having their Saturday mornings with their daughter at Costco, whatever it is.
Yeah.
What You've scaled it huge. You're buying routes out of state, that sort of thing. But for someone just taking that first step, like what is that? What is that process going to look like? Are they getting a ton of inventory in their garage and people are coming by and picking it up from their garage at home? Like, how does this work to start the process of outsourcing some of the steps?
Yeah, I think you can get really creative on that of like where the inventory. So we actually, when we made a hire, we actually bought a little half size landscaping shed from Costco. I think it was like $400, and put it inside our side gate. So then our operator or stalker wasn't coming into our house to grab the product anymore. You know, some people will give them like the garage door opener and have a garage fridge or what have you, to do that until you do kind of, outgrow that and you need to get a storage place or something like that. The other thing too that's really interesting, Jared, is there are so many of these. You know how like co-working spaces like we work back in the day. Now there's so many um, co-storage places, and I think a lot of it's from like the FBA, the drop shipping
Yeah.
models, where now you can just rent like a 6 by 6 space that might not even have ceilings go all the way up to the roof. They're just little section cubicles. They have a forklift driver that will bring your product in from the drop off area. So like there's so many of these places now where you don't even have to like have a ton of capital to just rent this space. That literally we have multiple people that will do these kind of industrial storage spots where they'll just rent a 6 by 6 spot and put in their own shelving, and the Costco boxes or the Vend Hub boxes will just get put at their door, and they just show up that day to put them in their space.
It's interesting. It's so interesting. It really truly is a bit of a, as you mentioned, it's like a boring business, but technology has certainly changed this business in a way that makes it also very attractive and very at the cutting edge. Some of the classic boring businesses, technology hasn't had as big of an impact in those areas. Like window washing, you still got to wash the window, right? But it's been interesting hearing you talk about technology and solutions that you can harness here. That yes, it's a boring business. Yes, it's something that has been a bit of a ubiquitous sort of thing, but it's got a lot going for it that is keeping it on the cutting edge of efficiency and productization.
Well, and if you think of where things are going with robots and all of these things, and I'm not even going to go to the robot thing because that's far out there for people to wrap their head around, but a simple one that would relate to you and everyone else is like Uber. Uber's most expensive part is the last mile, like the last mile to the airport, the last mile to drop someone off. Same thing. If you think of Instacart, GoPuffs, DoorDash, any of these product delivery companies, what if I live in an apartment complex and I go to GoPuff's website and I order a Cheetos and a Dr. Pepper for $7. And now they have to, from their warehouse across town, have a driver deliver that $7 order to me because I have a $99 a month subscription. What if they were like, hey, those products are in the micro market downstairs. Go down there and you'll get 10% off, but you just got to go downstairs. Or at some point, so now this vending machine or micro market in this building is basically the last mile for all these apps that are selling these items but getting crushed on the margins for these smaller transactions that aren't like 20 pounds of ground beef delivered from Instacart from Costco. No, seriously, like, or here at Oregon, the university across the street, they have these little like delivery robo carts that are delivering hot food from the union over to Joe Blow's dorm. Like, what if that downstairs micro market had that little robo thing that now Instacart's like, hey, rather than my driver go deliver that to you, why don't we just pay the machine downstairs, and now you have a partnership with GoPro. Like, that's the stuff that really excites me because it's like it's not just vending, it's logistics, delivery, all of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. Boy, that's a look into the future I hadn't thought of. So you're bullish on where this is going, not just where it is.
Well, I just think now, I mean, you think of vending. I had someone yesterday tell me a story. They were just in Japan and they were like, you could literally go, because that's where vending started. And vending is not just candy bars and Diet Cokes like America thinks vending is. Vending is like unattended retail. And so I just think it's getting caught up, employees. It's hard to get employees these days. And it's just a perfect storm of with technology.
As we move to the end here, we've talked about all the upsides, all the positives, and there's so many that are going for it. Risks, downsides. I think there's an obvious downside that until you scale a team out, you're doing this. You're signing up for a job, right? You got a lot of flexibility around it, of course, but you're kind of signing up for a job. But other downsides and other risks. We haven't talked about any risks, if there are any, in this business.
Yeah, I think the first downside is what you said. It's not passive until you make it passive, and I'll be the first to tell you that. I think the second thing is it's not get rich quick. Getting three locations is a lot of at bats, and a lot of people want 100 locations like me, and there's a lot of knows and stop reaching out to me type people that it's like baseball. The hitter gets used to striking out, but if he gets 3 out of 10, he's going to the all-star game. And I always tell myself that it's not a knockout punch. It's like you trying to get to the 12th round and survive the no. So you got to get comfortable being turned down, and some people just aren't. And then I think the other risk is um, whoever builds the route the quickest is gonna have a head start. So like for me personally, I think that's where my urgency comes from is more and more people are gonna want to try to get into this at some point, and the market's gonna become more and more mature. But right now, it's just like a perfect tidal wave of timing.
Yeah. Okay. Um, Mike, where can people follow along with what you're doing? Maybe tell people more about, where you're living, where you're hanging out in terms of online, and some of the stuff that you have available for people to take advantage of.
Yeah, so we have our Vendingpreneurs website is obviously an easy place to kind of learn some stuff, and then YouTube is a place that I've really started to kind of make an effort on in 2025. I know people are kind of reverting back to long form content, and also just like um, just I'm very passionate about. If you want to do it yourself, like here's all the content, here's the type of locations that we like to target and all of that stuff. And yeah, so I think YouTube is probably the best place for following along on the journey.
Well, we will include links to both of those places in the show notes. Mike, that was super interesting. I mean, I think everybody who listens to this podcast has a bend towards side hustles.
Mhm.
And obviously, every side hustle can be taken into something that is all of a sudden a full-time gig. A lot of people who listen to this podcast will have that exact story. Something they started on the side, turned into something they really enjoyed, turned into something bigger, and all of a sudden it's their full-time thing. You've certainly made a really large thing out of it, but it's been an inspiring interview to just get into the weeds on something that I think a lot of people probably just drive right by when they see it at the airport, when they see it at their local urgent care, or their doctor's office, or their apartment complex, and don't even think about the business behind it.
Oh, you're spot on. And the other side of that too is we have. Well, I know a lot of operators that they have full time jobs and they're doing this as like a 30K a month thing, and it's like funding their kids through college or paying for nannies and country club memberships and all of that. So like for me, it was more I was over traveling and it was like, all right, we're going all in on this. It's not like I went to school for this or anything like that. So I think it's you can make this as big as you want to make it, or it can be as small as you want it to be. So I know a lot of people that are happy with their 2 locations that pay for their kids' daycare, and that's their side hustle.
What final question? What do you tell people you do for a living when you meet someone at a party?
Oh, this is Jared. This is the question I never know how to answer. I just say
I
I'm a
bet.
classic entrepreneur
There you go.
that I grew up not far from where Warren Buffett lives, and he always has this saying like when he looks into CEOs, he's like, "Did they have a lemonade stand as a kid?" And so that's kind of my thing now. Is I'm like, okay, I want to find other people with the entrepreneurial DNA that have had a lemonade stand before. So that's who I look for in a party.
I never had a lemonade stand, but I don't know if you remember. We look like we're of roughly the same age bracket. The little computer game called Lemonade Stand.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh man, now that was my favorite computer game growing up. So
I mean, even like the computer game Oregon Trail. I'm like,
yeah,
you had to be smart on how to like buy the ox and buy the like all the stuff, buy the medicine.
I'm not even kidding you. The Oregon Trail came up on a podcast a couple weeks ago. This is too funny. Who would have ever thought on an entrepreneurship podcast the Oregon Trail would come up twice in 1 month? That's amazing.
That's awesome. I love the Oregon Trail.
Uh, well, you're in good company here, Mike. Thanks so much for coming on and joining us. Really appreciate it. Thanks for sharing so much value. We'll catch up with you again soon.
Jared, thanks for the time and thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Hey everyone, Spencer here, founder of Niche Pursuits. Are you adding a new internal link pointing to each article you publish? You should be. Ever find it time-consuming and a bit overwhelming? Remembering what content you publish and deciding which anchor text to use can be a real headache. What if there was a better way? Well, that's exactly why I created Link Whisper. Simply click Add Inbound Internal Links, and Link Whisper will scan your site in seconds and suggest the most relevant links with appropriate anchor text for your new article. Now simply check the box next to the internal links you want to add, and Link Whisper will add these links for you. No need to go into each article, edit, and add the link. It's already done. No more manual internal link building or guesswork. Just efficient, accurate linking that saves you time and improves your SEO. Transform your content strategy with Link Whisper. Start linking smarter, not harder. Use the coupon code PODCAST for $15 off. Head over to linkwhisper.com and use coupon code PODCAST to get $15 off.